living la vida low carb. This show is changing lives. We talking about your diet, trying to get you feeling right. Cut up them avocados, fry some eggs. Time to explore the longest running health podcast, hosted by Jimmy Moore. Time to give up the crappy garbage. We're getting into ketosis. Every day is a new step to your goal. Yeah, you're getting closer, motivated and focused. Don't stop, just go. Time to get inspiration from the Living La Vida Low Carb Show. Hey, the livinglowcarbshow.com.
Yes. So, or should I say good eye, because she's from the land down under, you guys. Where are you in Australia?
I'm in Newcastle, so kind of near Sydney, about 2 hours.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, I loved my time in Australia, and yeah, it's an amazing country. All right, guys, we're going to get started here. That right there is Nikki Crendal. She is a wonderful person on Instagram. You need to go follow. She's all nerdy. Get used to that. She's very nerdy. bio.kim.carnivore. That's bio.chem.carnivore. She's a dietetics student. She's healed autoimmune disease just by eating meat. So she's a big fan of the carnivore diet. She's all about bioenergetics, and we'll talk about a little bit of that here today. But she has sculpted her body and knows all the ins and outs of body recomposition. A lot of people, they have trouble with this, Nikki, so I'm really glad that you're here today. Let's start with your story. Who are you? Where'd you come from? I know you're in Australia, but tell us your story about how you got into, was it the autoimmune disease that got you into wanting to do what you do now?
Definitely. I've got 2 kids, so I'd had my first child, and I've always, been really into the gym. So I've always been quite active, and but I found I'd never tried keto or anything like that before. I always followed the standard bro science that you do at the gym. Lots of protein, but lots of carbohydrates. And every time you worked out, you'd have to have a lot to add back in there, I guess, after you've trained. But anyway, I'd had my first child, and I just felt like I was getting to a point where no matter what I did, no matter how much I did, I just wasn't seeing any results. I wasn't really gaining any muscle, and my body wasn't really responding. On top of that, yes, I had a lot of autoimmune things going on, and I have always had a lot of autoimmune. So I've always had hay fever, asthma, to the point where as a little kid, I was always a bit worried about going to other people's houses, because if they had cats or dogs or anything, it would really upset me, and I'd end up coming home so uncomfortable. So, they've always been with me. I also have this condition called Raynaud's disease, which is not serious. It's just a circulation problem, if anybody's heard of it. I believe it might be thyroid related. So anyway, that was kind of bothering me as well. So anyway, long story short, had my first child, and wasn't seeing results. Feel like my autoimmune's getting worse and worse and worse. I started coming out with this funny rash as well every time I went into the shower, and I thought, oh my God, I just have to do something about this. It's just something's got to change. So I went and had a few blood tests, and came back with a lot of inflammation, basically. Apparently my blood wasn't looking very good, and so the first thing they suggested me removing was dairy, and then I fell pregnant with my second, so I removed dairy, and I didn't remove any of the other things that came up. And then after having my second, I thought, I'm going to give this a really good go, and around the same time, I kind of fell into paleo, and then fell into keto, of course, and then fell into carnivore. And I will say the first time I heard about carnivore was from the ketogenic girl. And I thought, oh my God, this just sounds so stupid.
Vanessa Spina is who you're referring to, yes.
Yes. That's right. And I really respect her. She's fantastic. But when I first heard about it,
I said she's a wonderful being.
She is. And she really, what I respect about Vanessa is she looks at the science, she reads up on it, and she finds what she doesn't just repost beautiful pictures. She actually looks at the science, and so I respect that. But anyway, I'd heard about the carnivore thing, and I thought, oh my God, that sounds terrible. But I gave it a go, and I have to say, I have successfully eliminated every one of my autoimmune problems.
What did you think was terrible about it, Nikki? That's interesting to me.
Yeah. I just thought, this sounds crazy. How could you possibly not have vegetables? I came from a very high vegetable diet, I guess. I was never vegan or vegetarian, but I was always like, vegetables are the way to go. And so, yeah, just
Yeah.
the idea of completely removing them, I thought that's nuts.
Well, and trying to teach people that now, like you're a dietetic student now, is it a traditional program you're going through where you have to learn about low fat diets, plant heavy diets? Like, how do you hold your nose and have your belief system?
It's extremely difficult. So when I came out of high school, I
Yeah.
originally did nutrition, and back then it was very similar to what it is now. You know, it's healthy, plant-based, plant-biased. And unfortunately, I didn't use it. I went off and, you know, traveled and didn't use it. So when I came back many years later, I thought, unfortunately, I wasn't able to use any of the knowledge that I'd gained because it had been too long. But I thought, where do I go? Do I go to nutrition or do I go to dietetics? I felt that nutrition possibly might be more open-minded to different ideas, but then I thought nutrition won't give me the qualification that I want. I wanted the dietetics qualification, which would have then allow me to hopefully do more.
Yeah.
But
Well,
in answer to your question, it's difficult because they do follow the mainstream idea, and at this point, I'll be honest, I don't feel like it's right to keep putting my hand up. I have a few times.
well, and
But
look, like I know, sorry, we're having technical issues. You're cutting out about every 3 seconds, so it's a little difficult for us to see each other. Sorry about that. But what I was asking was, here in America and even there in Australia, there was a dietitian named Jennifer who was promoting low carb, high fat diets as a dietitian, and she had her license removed because of that, because the Dietetics Association is just so strong there. It's that way in Canada. It's that way here in the States. Like, are you concerned that, yeah, you'll get the degree, but they'll be watching you like a hawk for everything you say?
absolutely. Yeah, it's a big worry for me. And as you said, it seems to be here, but it's everywhere. And there was another case, if you've heard of Gary Fettke as well, who's not a
Of course,
dietitian, but he's a,
of course. Yeah,
yes,
and he's a
yes,
doctor.
and
Was an osteopath, I believe he is, and so yeah, I actually spoke on a stage with Gary back in his heyday before he came under all the scrutiny. Same with Professor Noakes in South Africa. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people pushing that button, but it's like these dietetic societies and even medical institutions, they have a lot of power over what the people are allowed to hear. And so if you've got your own anecdotal like evidence of how you overcame your autoimmune, that's irrelevant. How you did that, Nikki, is what they would say. That's not supported
yes.
by the science. And so that's going to be an uphill battle as you go about your career.
It seems to be, yeah, it does seem to be. And what's interesting, Jimmy, is that I almost feel like there seems to be almost like there's got to be a point where they pull us into the room at the end of the course and say, right, everything we've just taught you about biochem, scrap that, follow what we tell you. Because I'm finding at this point it difficult to see how we get from biochemistry of how fuels are used in the body to
Yeah.
to the pyramid, the food pyramid. I don't
Yeah.
understand. Yeah. But I will say, one thing that's given me a lot of hope is that there are two clinics that I know of in Sydney, and I'm sure there are more, but there are two clinics that I know of that follow this way, and that are very big on low carb, and they've had a lot of success with a lot of their all their diabetes patients. And so I hope that I can maybe work alongside them, or at least get support from them. And so far they have been very supportive, and we've been able to chat back and forth. So that's giving me hope.
Yeah. Well, and look, there are pockets of people out there like Gary Fettke and others. There was this nice event there in Australia called Low Carb Down Under that still does events and brings on speakers. You're probably going to end up speaking at one of those events when they find out who you are.
Oh,
They know who
I'd
you
love
are.
that.
I know the organizers. I will for them to invite you. But yeah, it's something that's going to be a challenge in your daily walk.
Yes.
But you look, I look at your page. You put up actual studies, like you don't play. You put up the study and you give your commentary on the study. I love that. I love these accounts like yours, and you even like do some drawings. I reposted a few of these on my stories because they're just so good. You got to be a little nerdy. You got to kind of like follow it. But I love your style is to say, okay, guys, this is the science. This is what matters, not the conjecture that's put out there, not what you hear, but what the actual data is saying.
Thank you. I appreciate hearing that. I feel like one thing that's missing a little bit in this space, and it's not necessarily a bad thing that people do this, but I feel like one thing that is missing is that there's a lot of pictures, pretty pictures that come up about low carb or carnivore, showing things about them. But I feel like every time I see an image like that, I think, what's the paper you got that from? Where did you get that from? I want to know the ins and outs of it. I need to understand why things happen. I can't just accept that they happen. So I do. Actually, I was laughing last night, Jimmy, because I was sitting there 10 o'clock on a Saturday night, and I was reading up on the fat composition and how it compared in mammoths to modern day cows.
Wow.
I really am a true nerd. That's what I do on a Saturday night.
Got me curious. What did you find?
It's very similar. It is very similar. I was looking at a very interesting paper about it, and it sounds like it was very similar. Like a grass-fed cow, of course,
Right.
a higher omega-3 to omega-6 ratio. And we all know that omega-6, you don't want too much of that. So yeah, very interesting.
I have heard. Well, congratulations, by the way, that you kind of are learning. You're kind of holding your nose as you're learning. You know from experience yourself that carnivore has helped. And I ostensibly you're telling people in your friends and family circles, hey guys, check this out. Like, here's why you want to be eating this way. But you are a bodybuilder is how I would describe you. I look at some of the workout videos and things that you do where you kind of have a weight on your chest there, and you're just kind of doing all these little exercises showing people how you sculpt your body. And this is a troubling thing for a lot of people because they want to see changes in their body. They eat carnivore or keto to be the start, but they know where to go from there. So help us out.
Yes. Yeah. And look, I will say I don't want to put anybody off either, because what I do, I've always been very active, and I love the gym, and I am active most days with actual training. And I don't think necessarily you need to do that. I think what you're doing is fantastic. Getting out there, moving, doing something is fantastic. But yeah, you're right. Once, you might have got to a goal weight, and then you think, you know what, I don't know what I'm going to do next. The next step should be muscle gain. And muscle is important for so many reasons, especially as we age. But I mean, one thing I explained to my mum was that I know she's worried about getting too big. And it's difficult for women to actually get big because we just don't have the right hormones for it. But one thing that I think people forget as well is that as we get older, it's not just about having muscle and looking like we've got muscle. It's also about if you're an 80-year-old person and you fall over and you have no muscle mass, stopping your fall, if you don't have any muscle around your bones, you'll break them. You'll break a hip, and that's extremely difficult to recover from. So the more muscle that you have, the better your posture will be. The more you'll be able to do. And also muscle is incredibly important for keeping your metabolism firing. You drop weight, and one thing that does happen is that you become a smaller version of yourself. So a smaller version does burn less because the body is extremely smart. It's not going to do anything it doesn't have to do because it's looking to survive. Muscle is one of the most energy, what's the word? It's very expensive to have muscle. So
Yes.
if you make it seem like you don't need any, the body will get rid of it. It's too expensive for the body to have. But if you show your body that you need it in order to survive, or you need it to quickly run and grab that animal and kill that animal, or you need to be able to lift something, the body will compensate, and then it will hold on to the muscle. And as I said, it burns through a lot just having it.
And what's amazing to me, and there's a lot of studies to this effect, that when you eat a ketogenic diet or a carnivore diet, it's actually very muscle sparing. Like I can even tell you at the times that I've really focused on strength training, which right now I'm not, but I want to soon. I've got to shore up some injuries in my low body before I push too hard. But when I have pushed, I have built a certain amount of muscle that even when I stopped doing it, as long as I kept eating in a ketogenic state or in a carnivore state, that muscle stayed. It didn't go away. Now, maybe it got softer, but it didn't. The strength is still there. It's amazing.
One thing that's very cool about, obviously carnivore, but also keto, hopefully, is that people, if they're cutting back on carbohydrates, they do tend to hopefully up their protein. And,
Yes.
Your body, I think we have felt for a long time that we need a lot less protein than we actually need. We do need a lot of protein, and there's a lot happening in the body every day we do recycle a lot of our proteins in our body, but we also need a lot from our diet. And so I think one thing that helps, and the reason why we tend to hold on to a bit more muscle when we're doing these diets is, because we're eating more protein, and where our bodies are probably saying, yes, finally, I'm getting the protein that I've always wanted. So yeah, it's great.
Well, and what's funny too is people think protein is this one monolithic, just protein. And protein is actually the breakdown of the amino acids. And so you can get protein from grains, or you can get protein from an animal food. And the animal food is far superior because it has all the complete profile of all the amino acids. Whereas the grains and other plant sources, you have to eat a little bit of this here, a little bit of that there, and it's hard.
Absolutely.
It's very difficult to get it in. Can you explain the purpose of the complete proteins and what happens when you get adequate amounts of protein from plant sources, but they're deficient in all the amino acids?
Absolutely. Yeah, so we've got 20 amino acids, 9 of them are essential, which basically means that 9 of them we need to get from our diet, and we can't make them ourselves. One of them that's particularly interesting that I've been doing a lot of research on is leucine. And
Yes.
leucine is not very high in non-animal foods. We can only really get it from animal foods. And leucine is actually needed in order to grow muscle. It literally comes down to that. Leucine, unless you hit a leucine threshold when you eat protein, you can recycle proteins, but you can't really stimulate mTOR, which is a growth promoting factor.
Right.
And I think in this space, people often get a bit worried about mTOR and therefore maybe having too much leucine, because as I said, it's a growth factor. And people think that if we have too much protein, stimulate mTOR too much, then, it might result in cancer or anything that is excess cellular growth. But in
Right.
fact, I from what I can see, we really do need mTOR, because not only do we need it if we're going to build muscle, we need periods in the day where we're anabolic, which is growing, and
Yeah.
and parts of the day where we're catabolic.
Yes.
And when you're doing a ketogenic diet or a carnivore diet, naturally that just tends to happen because you're not eating all day. You
Yeah.
tend to be able to do a little bit more fasting, and so you're having periods where your mTOR and your leucine are being spiked, so you're able to grow. You're able to grow some muscle. You're able to renew your cells, and then you'll have periods where everything drops back down, insulin drops back down, and you're catabolic again, and then you're getting rid of old things. So, yeah. Back to your question, leucine is particularly important. As I said, you can only get that from animal products, and that's why it's so important to not rely on just vegetarian proteins.
Are you tired of playing the mask game? Me too. That's why I wanted to tell you about the Unmask. This is a breathable, completely breathable. It covers, you can't even see that it's breathable, but it's breathable. Whether you're going on a plane, having to go into a store and wearing this thing, playthemaskgame.com is how you can get this mask. They come in all kinds of colors and everything. In fact, right there, you can see right through it what it is, but when you're wearing it, it does not look like it's anything different, but it's breathable, baby. Playthemaskgame.com.
There seems to be this really big move worldwide right now to get us away from red meat, away from animal-based foods. It's not new. I've been around 17 years talking about this stuff. They were poo-pooing on all that 17 years ago. I remember the World Health Organization would come out, oh, well, all this red meat is killing the planet, and we have to learn to live on plant-based foods. And then this plant-based meat stuff started coming out. I'm sure they're popular there in Australia, just like they are here. And it just seems like they're hell-bent to get us to eat not food and take away our real food from us.
It's extremely sad. And not only with eating those foods are we getting so many awful additives and things that are not great for our body, but yeah, we're also not getting the nutrients that we need that meat can so easily provide for us. And on top of it as well, for the environment, it's terrible. It's terrible for the environment. You know, we need cows to be on the grass and breaking down the grass. And I mean, I'll admit I'm not amazing at everything to do with the sustainability, but really I know for a fact that's not good for the environment.
Right. I've seen some videos and I've heard TED Talks from people like Alan Savory. If you haven't seen his TED Talk, it's amazing on this topic of sustainability. It would take like barren areas of land that they just gave up on. The nutrients were all gone. It was just like a desert. It was just so barren. And all they did was put ruminant animals onto that land. And wouldn't you know, within a few months, green, luscious grass started to grow because the manure would get in the ground and nourish the ground. Like, cows have gotten a bad rap. They fart, so therefore they're opening the ozone layer. And the red meat is horrible for people to consume, and on and on and on. They vilify this very beautiful animal that's providing such wonderfulness, not just for our health, but for society's health, for the world's health. And yet it's being portrayed as exactly the opposite.
Yeah, it's extremely sad. And even in my course, I mean, this doesn't have anything to do with sustainability, but I couldn't believe that we spent about 3 sessions going through all the different nutrients that you need, obviously, and then all the different places that you can get them, and in what amount of food that you need to eat in order to get each of those nutrients. And every single time it came up with something to do with beef. It was beef liver. It was some sort of liver, but it was usually beef that gave you the most. And I put my hand up and I said, oh, because she finished the lecture saying, so in the end, what we can see is the best way to get your nutrients is from, a variety of plant foods and blah, 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 blah. And I said, but that's interesting because beef liver keeps coming up. What about beef liver? And she said, oh, well, look, the best way is always going to be fruit and vegetables. Move on. and it's very sad because, not only are people not understanding that it's terrible for the environment, having these horrible factories, but it's also we're so lacking in nutrients because of it. It's a shame, and people aren't willing to look outside their scope.
Well, and they talk about all the water it takes to produce a pound of ground beef and all the environmental sources, but they never talk about all the pesticides and herbicides and things they have to use to make plants happen, and all the dead animals that have to be sacrificed at the holy altar of your vegan diet. Like, they're all the time the ones that care about animals, and I care about animals, but animals have a purpose in this world, some of them to nourish us. And so, but they kill tons of animals at the holy grail of having their plant-based foods. Where is the irony? Nobody ever talks about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're taking away their homes in order to create the factories, and it's sad. And I was going to say, with regard to the pesticides and things that they use, what is amazing, and I think part of the reason behind people get so much success with autoimmune on when they go keto carnivore is because literally it might even just come down to the fact that they're not eating so many pesticides all day long. Yeah.
And the GMOs is what I said.
Absolutely. Yeah. By eating a lot of animal foods, and especially when you're eating high quality, you're just not getting those things that are covered on your food all day long. So I think that's a big part of it.
Big part of it. So let's get back to why I brought you on today, because you do have a sculpted body. You do a good job showing videos all the time, like I said, on your Instagram page, and you show it off from time to time. I love your new trend where you're just like, all right, it's another mirror selfie. Let's do it today. Hey, if you got it, you got it, Nikki. You show it off. You do it. You go, girl. But people, they don't really put the emphasis on the nutrition when it comes to shaping their body and getting it to have that right composition. They think it's all about gym work, which I've never seen you in a gym. You're outdoors on monkey bars, you're using benches, you're using body weight exercises. You don't usually do a lot of gym stuff. So that's one myth you're breaking, that you need a gym. You don't. Gym is helpful for some people, but you don't need it. But why do they neglect the nutrition component? Because we know keto carnivore, some of the reasons why we've already talked about the muscle sparing effect. It's really effective for that. Why don't people put enough emphasis on the nutrition as the first thing rather than killing themselves physically?
I think because people put too much emphasis on thinking that you can eat what you want and then just burn it back off again. And it's kind of interesting because I am a massive advocate for exercise, as you know. But I also think if you look back even 80 years, people didn't go every morning and go for a run. I mean, exercise has become such a big thing these days where, every person most days goes to the gym and does this big hard workout. But we've never really had to do organized exercise before. I mean, we'd run and chase an animal and then we might not do anything for a few more days. And I think the exercise that we do these days is to compensate for what we eat. And so what I like to achieve with my exercise is I love being able to do it anywhere. I love being able to just drop down and do it in my living room, doing it outside in the sun. And in fact, I will admit that I was going to the gym a lot more than I have been lately. And that's pushed because we've only just about to come out of lockdown. We've been in lockdown since pretty much June. So that was a bit pushed. But I think sometimes those things are great because it makes you think, okay, what can I do with what I've got? And really, I will say, guys, I have managed to gain a lot of muscle. I'm going to put a post up about it soon and just do a little comparison thing. But since lockdown started, for the last few months, just being able to go outdoors and do different workouts, I think I've been able to gain a lot more muscle and my body composition's changed again. So I don't, what I'm saying is that I've used one set of weights. I've got a 10 kilogram set of weights that I use. And other than that, I just use my body weight. And I think that's the most effective way to exercise. It's great.
And the fact that you're consistent with it, like every day I'm seeing a study or an exercise video from Nikki Crendal. And I know that's what I get. That's why I love following you, because I love the science, and I'm trying to learn how to shift my own body composition. So seeing someone that knows what they're doing, it's fun. Seeing the proper form and then trying to mimic that. I'm not quite where you are, not even close, but I'll get there someday. So there's a lot of people that just don't know where to start. Is a push-up like the basic starting point for people if they're trying to just get going with kind of a whole body approach? Or is it just like air squats? What would you recommend for somebody that's a total newbie? They don't know anything about exercise. They want to have body recomposition. They're eating keto or carnivore. What should they start with?
Well, first of all, I think you need to understand why you're doing it, why it's important to be pushed a little bit, because what you're trying to achieve is you're trying to tell your body that I'm going to die unless I have this muscle, basically. You're trying to show your body that it's necessary, because as I said, it won't really hold on to it very well if you don't show it that it's necessary. So you need to be doing something that is either adding some resistance, some force, some speed, something that is more than what you're currently doing. But that does not have to be something crazy. You don't have to be running and doing sprints. You don't have to even be doing push-ups and things. What I would recommend is something that you can do in your house, that you can just do then and there, because instead of thinking, okay, from tomorrow, I'm going to do an hour every single day. That's not practical. It's too hard to start doing that. I mean, you might hope that one day you can do 45 minutes most days, but at the start, if you can do 10 minutes every day of something that is moving your body and challenging it, that's the key, challenging it. So what I would say is get yourself a set of those resistance bands. Fantastic. Get a little set of them, different resistance. Get some little booty bands. They are fantastic. So you can do a whole body workout just using 1 or 2 resistance bands. And they're fantastic because they do add a bit of resistance. You can tie them to things. You can just basically do simple back and forth movements. And you can do so much just with that one band, even just doing different types of movements within the same movement. So you could do, back and forth, and then do some pulses, and then just hold it as long as you can.
Yes. That's
adding resistance.
And change the speed. I love what you've been doing lately with the kind of super slow going down and then pulling yourself back up and then super slow. That's going to make you go to failure a lot quicker than quick reps, multiple quick reps going that slow. Do you find that's effective for you? Has it been?
Absolutely. I actually find holds and things even more effective than regular back and forth movements, because really in that moment you're focusing on, you're able to focus more on your posture. You're able to do the mind-muscle connection, which is very, very important. Knowing what muscle you're trying to work and thinking about it as you're doing it. So if you're doing a hold, you can much better think about, okay, what am I trying to clench, I guess. And what I will say that's important as well is you don't want to feel any pain, but once you get to a point where you're feeling resistance and it's becoming difficult for you, I remember reading once that Arnie said, once you finish your repetitions you're going to do and you're starting to really feel the burn, then do another 30 seconds. I don't know if that's actually quoted, but he said something like that.
He's the GOAT. He's the GOAT, so he might know a little thing or two about that.
I agree. So basically, once you feel like it's difficult, then hold as long as you can. Hold another 30 seconds
until the tears start coming off your cheeks.
Exactly. Well, I mean, maybe not that long, but
your arm just like hanging there.
Definitely. But I would recommend getting yourself some resistance bands. And getting an app on your phone that just, you know, follows your time. I do a timer that's on 30 seconds. Every 30 seconds it beeps me. And so I basically know that if I'm doing an exercise, I might do it for a minute, for example. And then once it beeps, I'll do an extra 30 seconds and just push through it.
Wow. Yeah, that's so helpful. Thank you, by the way, because a lot of people, they quit shortly after they feel the burn. And it's like, no, the burn is what you've been waiting on. You want that burn. One of my favorite exercises that I like to do to push myself, Nikki, is I have a big 200-pound tractor tire. How many kilos is that? Like 80-kilo tractor tire. It's a heavy tire. Yeah. And I will flip that thing about 8 to 10 times, take a breath for about a minute, then flip it again 8 to 10 times, take a breath, and try to do as many rounds as I can. I usually, when I haven't done it in a while, it's about 4 to 6 rounds. When I've done it for a while, I can get 8 to 12 rounds, but it is a workout. But you got to like stay focused and you'll feel the burn. I'm like halfway up one of the things. I'm like, I can't do it, push. And it's just, I can do, like, make myself do it.
And you know what? That's fantastic, because the more that you're able to work big muscles and all your muscles all at the same time, the better it's going to be. And so that's fantastic. I'm impressed.
Yeah, I need to get at it. Like I said, I'm trying to heal some lower body injuries. I've had some ankle and knee little tweaks, and it's like I'm trying to heal those. And when they're solvent, I'm going to give it a go and really push myself, because I do enjoy it. That's a key here too, is when you find something that's enjoyable, because if it's enjoyable, you'll do it. You've got motivation to do it. One of the ones that I like to do as just a basic thing to start, and maybe people could do this, find 2 equally heavy weights or paint buckets or just something that you can carry around and do this called farmer's walk. And all you got to do is just walk around in your yard carrying heavy stuff. And you might not think that's doing a lot, but it's doing a whole lot.
Do you know, I was just thinking the other day, how can I mix up at-home workouts, obviously with it being in lockdown? But most people have a set of stairs in their house, and most people have milk in their house. Get yourself 2 of the handle milks that are the, whatever it is, 2-liter bottles. Walk up and down the stairs a few times. And you don't have to do it for an hour. Just maybe every time the kettle's boiling, walk up and down the stairs with a couple of milks. That's the best sort of exercise.
That's a good idea. One of my pains is my left knee. So when I go upstairs, it's like, and so
they can be brutal.
You modify, you do what you can. It sucks getting older,
Absolutely.
but it is what it is.
Well, I mean, that's where I think resistance bands are fantastic, and resistance bands have come to the rescue for me many, many times. And of course, as I said, I've had 2 children, and for me, resistance bands were the thing that I used to get back into it and to go slowly. And so I would recommend to anybody resistance bands. They're great for injuries, because you can really work around. You can focus on certain parts of the body and not others that are bothering you. So yeah, everybody seems to have a little injury that affects them. For me, I have a neck issue from an injury many years ago, so I have to work around that. And it's good to know that once you figure out what you can do and what exercises, possibly maybe even chatting to somebody who knows what they're doing, like a physio, and just getting a couple of exercises that at least won't make things worse, and you can certainly work around most injuries, which is good.
I had a friend come walk with me on my little trail that I'm doing. You mentioned earlier me just walking every day, and it's great. It's kind of gotten me into moving every day. And she's a physical therapist, and she saw me limping because my ankle was injured, and she's like, "You should modify that. You should walk slower. You should work on strengthening that when you're not walking and da-da-da." And she's right. Like, there's little things you can do to modify. The worst thing you can do is just do nothing and say, well, I'm injured, therefore I can't do anything. And that's never the answer.
I completely agree. And it's amazing how it can affect other parts of your life as well. And for me, only just in the last 6 months, I've I had an injury when I was about 10 where I fell on the back of my neck, and my cervical spine's kind of going in a funny direction. And, you know, I've had headaches and awful things like that, all, you know, for a long time. And of course they have lessened a lot since going to the carnivore and keto lifestyle. So I'm feeling a lot better, but you know, it was still bothering me, and I was worried about doing certain exercises, and basically it got to a point where I just wasn't really doing any upper body at all because I was so worried that in some way I'd pull my neck. But it is amazing how now, and it did mean I had to go right back to the beginning, get my posture right first, do very, very light exercises. But I can tell you it was so worth it, because now, even in my day-to-day when I'm studying, I feel like my posture is a lot better. I'm obviously not getting headaches like I did. So by going right back to square one, basically, and trying to fix the problem and then working on that, you'll get a lot more success for sure.
Keto can be hard. Tabulating, measuring, baking, taking 3 months to perfect one recipe, and to mixed reviews.
Did something die in here? Oh, I think it moved.
And by that point, you give up your diet, find a dark corner, and stuff yourself with sugar, carbs, and regret.
This, isn't what it looks like.
Well, this is where Keto Chow saves the day. The easiest, tastiest, ketoist meal replacement on the market.
It's like ice cream melted in my mouth.
Yes, but melted ice cream with all the protein, nutrients, vitamins, and electrolytes your body needs.
Oh, that's cool.
And with 3 starter kits, each with restaurant tips, keto food guides, and a ton of flavors to try, your taste buds and your waistline will thank you.
Thank you.
So grab your starter kit today at jimmylovesketochow.com.
It's so easy.
Keto Chow. Make keto easy.
I love it. And I love that you just start where you are. Don't try to be Arnold Schwarzenegger. Nobody is Arnold Schwarzenegger, best of all time. But be the best you are, like, right? And I want to touch on something, by the way, because you mentioned this to me, and I'm sure you don't mind I talk about this. But, like, there's criticisms of a woman especially, and a lot of women watch my show, listen to my show, and they're like, well, I don't bulk up or I'll get too skinny and people will mock me. And you get some of that stuff. Oh my gosh, how dare you be a woman with muscles? How do you handle that? How do you, first of all, mentally for yourself deal with that? Because that's horrible, by the way. If you're somebody on a health journey trying to make yourself stronger and better, screw you for whoever's making those. But like the women are just so fearful.
Yeah, I know it can be difficult, and if somebody gets me on the wrong day, it's not that it does affect me sometimes. But then I think you need to look at as well, when I'm in a good frame of mind and I can see clearly, I try to look at where is it coming from. And the last time this happened, and I think what you're referring to is recently I was out exercising, and a gentleman came up and started chatting to me, overweight gentleman, and he was telling me about how he's diabetic and blah blah blah. We had a nice little chat, but then he went on to sort of say to me, you know, I think you're doing too much. I think you need to try and drop back on, because you know I can't remember exactly what he said, but he was basically saying that I was too muscly for a woman and that I need to change what I'm doing and I should do more walking and not so much weight training. And I was really annoyed about it. I felt really, really offended. And I went and sat in my car, and then I happened to notice him sitting and smoking a cigarette. And I thought, you know what? I think I just need to remember where that's coming from. And this poor gentleman, I felt sorry for him actually, because he's in a time in his life where he's probably extremely confused. And as everybody is with all the information that's out there, it is extremely confusing. But I think figuring out why maybe somebody might have said that to you. And then also, I do feel like as I get older, I find myself worrying less about what people think and more about what do I love. I mean, I feel like in the last year or so, there's been a lot of changes in my life, and I've gone through a divorce, and I feel like since that, I feel like I'm much more, I'm just going to do what I love. And I'll be honest, on Instagram, the things that I would never have posted previously, I'm getting a lot more likes from people. The overall majority is people seem to be really enthusiastic about what I put up. So I think, you know what, there's going to be people that don't like it, but I like it. So
Exactly. And like, I get a lot of them too, as you can imagine, because I don't look the part of someone that's supposed to be talking about health. And so I get those negative people. And I'm just thinking, why do you follow me? Like, if you have that much hate in your heart for me that I don't look the way you want me to look, go follow somebody that's your perfect. And like, there's more fish out there in the sea to go bother and troll, not Jimmy Moore. So,
absolutely,
but,
absolutely.
and you know, people would look at a body type like yours. Oh my gosh, look at all that muscle. She needs to have more womanly curves. I'm like, a strong woman is a very good looking woman. I'm sorry, there's no bones about it. Like, it shows you care about your body. It shows you're very mindful of your health. I don't know where people come from with this. I get it. I guess the traditional curves of a woman and a little bit more fat. I mean, I don't know. From a biological perspective, I guess we're so used to seeing women that don't have muscles, so that when we see one that has them, we're like, oh God, what a freak.
Yes, yes, yes. I think what I am seeing, which I think is nice, is the I feel like what seems to be trendy seems to be changing. You know, I don't know if it's like that over there, but I feel like activewear now in Australia, it's like that's all women seem to wear. It's getting more and more outrageous. But with that comes more of an acceptance of activity and being active and having muscle. And I think what I like seeing is some of these brands that do sell the activewear are bringing in women who have different shapes. Some of them are really muscly, some of them aren't. But I will also say as well that it's that there are so many women that say to me, "Oh God, I just don't want to get too big." Guys, it is difficult to get really big. I mean, really, like there's a lot to it, and women just do not have the hormonal. We just don't have the hormones in order to get huge. So yeah, I mean, you can gain quite a bit of muscle like doing what I'm doing, but I am doing everything to gain muscle. Really, like I'm eating
Yeah.
way more protein than I probably need. I'm training a lot, and I'm still not huge. I'm still quite, you know, I'm just a little bit muscly, but I'm not enormous, so it's impossible unless you're on steroids or something, guys. It's impossible. It is easier for men to gain muscle, and of course, that's just naturally what men are happy to look like. But yeah, it's difficult for women. You really have to be doing a lot to get huge. You just won't.
And that has been out there forever and ever. Amen. Women just, oh, I want to bulk up. And I'm just thinking, all the women bodybuilders, like, yeah, hold my beer. It's not going to just happen that you just start lifting a little bit of weights and you're going to be, you know, beefed up. It's like, it doesn't happen that way. So thank you for addressing that. So before I let you out of here, let's talk about your nerdiness. Bioenergetics. What I'm assuming that's like a lot of these things you write or post studies about, right? Where it's like how the body uses energy and takes substrates from food and different parts of like things in the body. Talk about bioenergetics.
Yeah, this is the part of health that really holds my attention. It's exactly what you said. Learning about what happens when we eat food. How is it metabolized? How is it used? How do we go from a food to making energy in the body? And how is that partitioned? And I find it absolutely fascinating, and knowing that in different circumstances as well, like for example, a ketogenic diet, how does that change how things are metabolized? Gluconeogenesis. I think my absolute favorite topic is probably gluconeogenesis, and understanding what happens when you take out one of the energy substrates, glucose. How does your body compensate and make its own? And how does it prioritize what it uses as well? So yeah, bioenergetics is basically the science of understanding what happens when we eat and how do we create energy from it. Love it.
And I about removing the carbs and how the body adapts, because mainstream, even what you're learning in your dietetics program, they'll be like, oh, you'll starve the brain of fuel if you don't feed it carbohydrate, and they say you need at least 130 grams of carbohydrate. And what they're referring to is the 130 grams of glucose that's necessary for the glucose-dependent functions of the brain. But what they're not telling people is gluconeogenesis and other pathways can make all of that from the fat and protein that you consume with zero carbohydrate intake. Why did they get that so wrong, Nikki?
Good question. I mean, as I said, I feel like there's got to be a point in my course where they say to us, okay, everything you just learn about biochemistry, scrap that, because at the moment I can't see where they how they get from that to the food pyramid. It completely confuses me. I don't know. I think it's really just often comes down to narrow-mindedness and knowing that, okay, well, we need glucose for certain parts of the body, but forgetting that, well, you can get it from other sources, and maybe not reading into an inability to want to research what else is out there. Honestly, Jimmy, I don't know. I don't know. I sometimes sit there at night and think, I'm doing all this reading and this is what I'm passionate about. And I will admit my opinion about certain things has changed a lot since I've been researching. And I came into it thinking that carbs are the complete devil and I would never touch them again. But I've changed my opinion when it comes to, for example, diabetes. I've changed my opinion slightly. I still think that they are a big part of the problem, but I think they're often not the actual cause of extreme disease. So opinions change, but I sort of think, doesn't anybody else, I'm talking about doctors and dietitians and things, I sort of think, how do they not sit there and want to think about, well, oh, that's interesting. The ketogenic diet does seem to be getting a lot of good results. Maybe I'll do a bit of research into it and see why people don't seem to be doing that. And it surprises me.
Well, and the biochemistry of ketone metabolism, why is it completely ignored? And then on top of being ignored, vilified as this horrible thing when, like, everybody who sleeps at night, which is, gee, I don't know, everybody, produces some ketones at night because that's the body's sophisticated way of shifting from a glucose metabolism. Even the highest carb eater at night are showing low levels of ketones because the body's like, all right, dummy stopped eating for a while. Let's shift over to another energy substrate. And it's amazing. People think they're either sugar burner or fat burner. We're both all the time, and we're vacillating back and forth between those because the body is sophisticated to keep you going. If it only relied on glucose, the moment you ran out of glucose, you would be dead.
Exactly. And I mean, I might be fasting, but then I might go and do a workout and then my glucose will go up. And that's just simply my body adapting and knowing that, okay, well, there's no glucose in the system. I'm going to create my own quickly, and it will create as much as it needs. And then it won't create anymore. And I just think it's a fascinating system because the body is just, in every way, it knows what it's doing, and it's very, very smart. But honestly, I don't understand why there is such a negative connotation about it. I think it possibly has to do with the hormonal profile that people get maybe when they're doing ketogenic. And I'll admit I haven't done a huge amount of research into that myself, and we certainly haven't come to that in the course very deeply. But there is, it could be that often cortisol is raised when you're going through gluconeogenesis, but it's really, your body adapts to it. I mean, it may raise a little bit in the first few weeks of adapting to the ketogenic diet, but after a while, your body gets better at understanding what it's doing. It builds more mitochondria, and then it finds peace in that place, and the body seems to be the happiest, being able to just create its own glucose as it needs it, and then not when it doesn't need it. And yeah, I don't know why it's so vilified. I really don't.
Well, be conspiracy theorist about it, but it seems like common sense scientific evidence that is very clear and repeatable. Like we've seen study after study after study, and you post them all the time on your Instagram page, and yet it just seems to be ignored. This is why you tell people, do your own research, figure it out for yourself, do what works for you, and don't wait for a study. If you know that it's working for you, you are the study at that point. You're showing N equals 1. That's it, helping you, and you're definitely doing your part to help people learn what those things are. Again, you guys go check her out. Nikki Crendal, she is bio.chem.carnivore. Again, that's bio.chem.carnivore over on Instagram. Do you have a website or anything, or aspirations to do something more like a podcast? You're very articulate at all the concepts you talked about. You should someday.
Oh, thank you. Oh gosh, if I could dream it, I would have a podcast where I could interview people, of course, and then I would love to go on one of those low carb cruises and actually speak, over in the US. I want to do speaking. I don't necessarily want to be sitting behind a desk and being a dietitian, because as you know, I think that possibly will be difficult for me. But I'd love to, I'd love to go around and do talks. That would be the ultimate goal for me. So hopefully.
I will put you in touch with the Low Carb Down Under people. They're located in Melbourne, and they do events in Brisbane and Melbourne and Sydney that I know of. I think they've done some in maybe Perth and Adelaide. I went to all of them when I was there. So when the world gets back to normal again one of these days.
Yes, hopefully.
Oh, Nikki, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. It was lovely.
Get inspiration from the Living La Vida Low Carb Show. Hey, the livinglowcarbshow.com. Woo!
Have you experienced the dreaded keto flu? Did you know that most of these symptoms are actually due to your body dumping excess electrolytes? This is where Element comes in. Element is a tasty electrolyte drink mix with everything you need and nothing you don't. That means lots of salt with no sugar. Element is formulated to help anyone with their electrolyte needs and is perfectly suited to folks following a keto, low carb, or paleo diet. Element contains a science-backed electrolyte ratio, 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 milligrams potassium, and 60 milligrams of magnesium, with none of the junk, no sugar, no coloring, no artificial ingredients, no gluten, no fillers, no BS. Everyone needs electrolytes, especially those on low-carb diets, or if you practice intermittent or extended fasting, if you're physically active, or sweat a lot. Add Element today and see how much better you feel and perform. Use the URL drinklmnt.com/Jimmy.